So, hi Naomi.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, lovely to meet you. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. Naomi, can you introduce yourself and your role and what social value means to you within your role?
Yep, so I am Naomi Morris. Nice to meet you. I am the Head of Housing Strategy at Birmingham City Council, so essentially that means I cover all big strategic projects that are linked to housing within Birmingham City Council. It could be linked to homelessness, it could be linked to the standard of our stock, or it could be linked to working with the private sector, or it could be linked to development and regeneration. So broad portfolio. I think in terms of what it means to me, in terms of my role, I think is it's very easy, I think, for local authorities to work in quite a siloed way, because of the statutory responsibilities that are on us that aren't the same, and we don't, as a group, as organisations, always capitalise off the inward investment that can be attracted through social value through the private sector. I don't think as local authorities we totally understand how to work well together, and that private sector organisations, want to do things that have a social impact, but how do we translate what that social impact looks like for us, given that we're on the coalface of a lot of it? So I think for me that my role is to try and join that up and make that better.
Brilliant. So are there any kind of communities where social value has been particularly meaningful?
I think there are loads of social value projects that have been meaningful in different ways. I think that we, as a council, we did so much work off the Commonwealth Games legacy that was very meaningful, but it's meaningful to who in different ways. Our repairs and maintenance contracts also make sure all of our children in temporary accommodation have Christmas presents as part of their social value. So it's meaningful in different ways. I think Birmingham has a very unique opportunity, and I think it still is the youngest city in Europe. Young people really should be attracted to working in housing through private organisations, I think, and that's an opportunity for me in terms of how can we build that social value better. We've got multi-million pound regeneration schemes, we've got a huge capital programme, we've got charities, we've got all of those things require jobs, skills, employment, and there will be young people that want to get into that, and I think for me linking those up is going to be really important.
And how do you build that social value into designing these projects?
So, as you can imagine, within the council we have quite a robust procurement process. We have a charter of social responsibility in terms of it's linked to our corporate plan. So any kind of big procurement tender, well, big or small actually, tender process should include specific aspects of those that are linked to our corporate plan, whether it's around the employment it creates or what it gives to charity, or what it creates in terms of skills, education, training, employment opportunities, but it's all linked to our corporate plan, which is around living well, working in the city, etc. So I think the thing is it's quite broad, and whilst that's good, because it means that lots of organisations can be involved, it can come across as probably a little bit incoherent sometimes. Okay. In that, I imagine to the private sector, in terms of conversations I've had specifically around housing, it's what's your ask? Like, what do you want the most? Do you want a load of jobs over here, or do you want us to do something around energy and retrofit over here? Is it a physical asset? Is it a thing? So I think by having it so broad, because the council is such a big entity, that can sometimes confuse the sector when they're working with you around something more specific.
Can you say we want everything?
Yeah, you can say we want everything, and then you end up in the negotiation of what gives then. Yeah. Or what are you giving us to get everything? Yeah. And I think that it's difficult in local authority world, particularly for Birmingham, obviously, but it's difficult for a local authority world because you haven't got a lot of bargaining power, you haven't got a lot to give extra to be able to get more. So I do think there is probably a thing around, well, for housing, definitely. The council, I think it's right that it's linked to a corporate plan, because it should be. It's not just housing that does tenders, not just housing that does procurement, it's not just housing that needs social value or social impact. But when you're thinking about a specific area and working with specific partners around what social value could look like, I think that there's a need probably to do some joint collaboration around what do we feel like those top 3 or 4 big priorities are, and how do we socialise that so all organisations that are working with us know that that's what we want in terms of a commitment to social value.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges that you face embedding social value?
I think the first one is very similar to what I've just said. I think that as a sector, we can come across a bit incoherent about what we want. And that means, I think, sometimes when people put forward, I've read bids or assessed things where there's been social value within it and it's good, it's not quite what we want, but we haven't communicated that, so people have gone for maybe what they think that we might want rather than what we. So that there's a piece there around how we communicate some of that, which is the first one. I also think it's in the housing space sometimes it's seen as social value or something else, so social value or affordable housing, or social value or energy efficiency. It's seen as a bit of you can't have it all. So which things are your most important? And that can be a difficult conversation sometimes. And I suppose also where it tallies on quality and price, that's always difficult. And like in a council, obviously, as you can imagine, we have guidelines that we follow around that. But I think it can be a difficult conversation, particularly I know Birmingham's situation is more acute in terms of the financial challenges, but all councils are struggling financially at the moment. So where you might want social value to become higher up the list, price tops it, and that's a difficult. That's not something that we'll be able to compromise on.
Yeah, it's a challenge, isn't it? And hopefully one that will change relatively soon. But I think that commitment to social value it needs to trump all, because actually when we support the communities, they become part of the economy. We will be able to make those changes as well, and it will have a longer term impact on the region.
Yeah.
What trends do you see in terms of social value and social housing? And what do you see the future is?
I'll answer the second part first, I think. So in terms of housing, I think people are now looking to deliver more affordable homes through regeneration, which is positive. Government recently widened their funding bracket grant programme to include regeneration, which wasn't historically included in the same way. Those usually involve really big developers, construction, opportunities, jobs, employment, skills, and there is a real opportunity to have a skills academy that support that work across the country, not just in Birmingham. Birmingham's got 2 very big schemes that's important to us at the moment. How is it going to support the infrastructure in that local community? How's it going to boost that local economy? What's it going to create for people that live there? I also think in Birmingham specifically, we've got quite a unique experience. We've got St Basil's as a young person's charity. They've got their first live and work programme, which supports young people, that jobs and homes piece being fundamentally considered together. So young people aren't in that kind of financial barrier where they can't get into work, can't afford rent, stuck in a cycle where they're reliant on benefits and actually don't want to be. There are so many opportunities for kind of private investors to support that kind of reduced rent model to enable young people into work and hopefully to be meaningful parts of their organisations. We did some work off the back of Housing Week with private organisations around that. One of the things I would have referenced in terms of our challenges is I don't think the local authority and private organisations speak the same language sometimes. We are likely to be much more bureaucratic, much more political. We'll be less able just to make a quick decision. I think sometimes private organisations really struggle with that and can quite easily get frustrated with the local authority as a partner, and I get it. I think it's about getting those 2 areas of the ecosystem to talk to each other in a different way, so they understand each other's languages better. Does that or for example, a private organisation might approach a specific politician and say, what would you like for social value, etc., and they'll have an individual opinion, but that might not be the council's opinion, and I think it becomes difficult then for private organisations to develop a strategy based on those conversations, thinking that's genuinely it. And the decision-making processes are different, and I think to enable those two areas to work together and to build social, and to have a genuine social impact then in a meaningful, big way, I think they have to be around the table together much more often.
Amazing. Thank you so much.